Democratic Congresswoman from Michigan, Debbie Dingell. Congresswoman, thank you very much, and thanks for joining us at a time that's very difficult. The holiday season was not going to be easy in any case. How did you feel when you heard about the president's comments?
I sort of had a hard time even understanding what was being said. Unfortunately, the first person who got to me asked me what I thought about the president saying my husband was in hell. So a little more context came later, and it hurt. I love my husband, as you well know. We had a love affair, most never have, and it's been a hard holiday season, and those kind of shots, people forget that members of Congress are human just like them, and we go through some real hard times.
You know, I frankly started covering your husband back in the 70s when I was the energy correspondent for NBC News, and of course he was legendary at Energy and Commerce, rising up to be the chair, the longtime chair. He should have been honored for his service as the longest serving member of Congress in the history of the United States. You shouldn't have been asking the president for any favors in honoring John Dingell's life and service.
So, I sort of feel, I don't want to get into the weeds because I don't want to go where he was, but the reality is he was a World War II veteran and was buried at Arlington, which is the only thing he ever asked me for, because he served in World War II defending this country. He was the longest serving member. He was not, contrary to what the president said there last evening in the rotunda. The speaker had asked me if I wanted him to be here at the Capitol, and I did not, because I did not want him to get anything special that other former members did not get. What I wanted him was at our church where we had been married, that I had taught Sunday school when in college, and when we happened to be in Washington on a Sunday, went to Mass. So he did lower the flags, and by the way, he called me. And I appreciated that call. He was very empathetic on that call. His kindness meant a lot, and I was grateful. And still to this day, even after the remarks last night, kindness meant a lot at a difficult time.
Nancy Pelosi spoke about it this morning. She was asked about it at her news conference. I wanted to share that with our viewers.
Let us pray for the president. The president clearly is insecure when it comes to statespersons. Whether it was John McCain, think of what he said about John McCain, and his supporters just overlooked that. Now John Dingell. What the president misunderstands is that cruelty is not wit. Just because he gets a laugh for saying the cruel things that he says doesn't mean he's funny.
He seemed to play to the crowds at these rallies, and he said a similar thing about John McCain, whose family was deeply hurt by that. What is it about the way he behaves in front of these crowds?
I don't know. It makes me sad. I do know, having watched more of these clips than I wanted to, what was said last night, he got a very mixed reaction. And I just think sometimes people need to remember that we're all human. And, I don't like the tone of the rhetoric in this country right now. I've said it many times, it's been one of the things that I've worked on for years. And social media, instead of bringing a tool that brought us together more, people think bullying and vitriolic comments and this whole tone of just cheap shots and divisiveness is okay. And I think we need to get back to a time of civility, and that you can disagree, but you can do it agreeably. And that, I don't know why he decided to do what he did last night, but to say it didn't hurt would not be the truth.
I noted also that your friend, a Republican, Fred Upton, a Michigan congressman, tweeted last night, "I've always looked up to John Dingell, my good friend and a great Michigan legend. There was no need to diss him in a crass political way. Most unfortunate, and an apology is due." Do you agree that an apology should come from the president?
I'm not looking for an apology. He said what he said, and it's there, and I'm going to keep trying to heal. But I would like to say that every one of my Republican colleagues from Michigan and many more, a very real diversity, and people that people would never expect. But the Michigan members have been incredibly supportive and loving, and Fred is not the only person that has made strong comments. Several of them have also said that they won't go to the White House or they won't speak to him. I don't want to get into that. I'm not, he said what he said and it hurt, and I'll leave it at that. But, in some ways, one of the Republican members said today, John Dingell is still up there working, because in a day that people might have felt awkward or the floor might not have been as something as it is, people were community on the floor. And I mean, people from Liz Cheney, the left Louis Gohmert, to, there were 20 Republicans of all kinds of backgrounds, geographical dealings that they have for things, came up to hug me and tell me that they were disturbed and that we all have to pull together and work together. And so if it takes something like this, hurting somebody, and it pulls us together, then I guess John tell me to toughen up, woman, handle it, and let's get people working together.
Well, that is a fine message to think about going into the end of the year and the holiday season. That's the Congress that I remember covering and loving so much. And thanks to you, and obviously we honor your husband. Thanks.
Thank you,
Debbie Dingell.
Now, folks, if you're just watching this, what
And coming up,
they're talking about is this. Donald Trump made this comment before his rally last night, where he had said that basically he made a hell crack about her husband's deceased representative, John Dingell, basically saying that maybe he was looking up from hell. And he said it in this speech before an audience in Michigan. And even a number of Republican lawmakers like Lindsey Graham are calling for Trump to apologize for this statement. It's going to take a while for it to play, I see, because they have this commercial ahead of it. But it's supposed to begin in 19 seconds, but while we're waiting for that to begin, Trump has not issued an apology, and it's far from the first time that he has made statements that are repugnant and offensive to many people around the world, not just in a particular region or part of the United States of America. Here it is.
So she calls me up like 8 months ago. Her husband was here a long time. But I didn't give him the B treatment. I didn't give him the C or the D. I could have. Nobody would have, I gave
And he says basically that he didn't
down the
give,
flags. Why you
that
taking them down?
he put the flags of bath for them.
Do this, do that. Rotunda, everything. I gave him everything. That's okay. I don't want anything for it. I don't need anything for anything.
And what Trump is saying, that he didn't do anything that was nothing but top class, but she voted against him with respect to impeachment anyway. That's what he was upset about. So he picked her husband, her late husband, to use as the basis for his blast against her. And she's barely a year into mourning his loss.
But let's assume he's looking down. But I gave him A+, not A, not B+, not B. I gave him the A+. And she called me, she said, oh, I won't go into the conversation because it's not fair to do that. But all I want to say is, let's put it this way.
So anyway, that's what people are complaining about with respect to what Trump said. And you hear the clip elsewhere, but you get the idea. And a number of people, so even Lindsey Graham said if he said that, I think he should apologize, saying he hadn't seen that, but it would be a bad thing. He said John Dingell's a fine man. So, and you just heard what Representative Debbie Dingell said. So subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com.